Ladies and gentlemen, today let's explore a story often untold, the journey of a woman with no friends, a woman who faces life on her own and learns to rise above it. She might not be the typical protagonist of grand tales, but she carries the resilience, the strength, and the quiet determination of a hero. This is a woman who walks alone, who has learned to rely on herself in a world where friendships, connections, and companionships often define one's place and purpose. Hers is a story of loneliness, yes, but also of inner growth, self-discovery, and unbreakable resilience. When people hear of someone with no friends, the first reaction is often pity, followed by a rush to judgment. Some assume it's a personal failing, a lack of warmth or sociability. Others think of it as a tragedy, a misfortune that she must endure. But beneath these judgments, if we choose to look deeper, is a story that reveals much more about courage than it does about isolation. In the early days, the woman with no friends likely saw her solitude as temporary. Perhaps she moved to a new city, started a new job, or simply found herself on a path less traveled. At first, it was easy to stay hopeful, to believe that companionship would soon find her. She believed she would eventually stumble upon like-minded souls, people who understood her without her having to explain, friends who would laugh with her, listen to her, and give her the joy of shared memories. But as time passed, she found that friends weren't as easy to come by. She would observe groups gathering at lunch, coworkers chatting at happy hours, or neighbors mingling at block parties, all of them sharing stories, jokes, and pieces of their lives. Yet somehow she always seemed to be on the outside looking in, her presence unnoticed, her absence unmissed. She realized that she didn't have the warmth of a friend's shoulder to lean on, the comfort of late-night conversations, or the joy of spontaneous plans. She was indeed alone. At first, this isolation was painful. It stung her pride, it tested her spirit, and sometimes it even made her question her worth. She wondered if there was something wrong with her, if she was missing some essential quality that others found in each other, but never in her. But slowly she began to understand that solitude does not equal inadequacy. She learned that friendships, though valuable, are not the sole measure of one's worth. She began to discover that her value, her identity, was not bound to the acceptance of others, but rather to the acceptance of herself. It was here, in the depths of her solitude, that she discovered a profound sense of self-awareness. When there was no one around to validate her, she had to find validation within herself. In her quiet moments, she found strength in her own thoughts, learned to listen to her inner voice, and began to see that she could be her own source of comfort and encouragement. She became the friend she was longing for. This journey was not easy. Without friends, even the simplest of tasks became a test of resilience. There was no one to call for help when the car broke down, no one to share a quick coffee break with, and no one to celebrate her small victories. She had to become her own cheering squad, her own support system. She learned to be resourceful, to find joy in small victories, and to celebrate her accomplishments, even if it meant doing so alone. She understood that her life could be fulfilling even if it wasn't validated by the presence of others. In the absence of social bonds, she found a bond with herself. She realized that self-care wasn't just about spa days or treating herself to luxuries. It was about building a foundation of love, compassion, and respect for herself. She began to enjoy her own company, to cherish her own thoughts, and to find beauty in her own presence. She didn't need to put on a show, to mold herself into what others expected, or to live up to anyone else's idea of who she should be. She was free to be herself, fully and authentically. Being a woman with no friends also taught her a deep empathy for others. She began to notice the silent struggles that others often overlook. She saw the loneliness hidden behind a smile, the insecurities masked by confidence, the pain concealed by success. Her own solitude made her sensitive to the isolation that others experience, and she found herself drawn to those who, like her, walked alone. She learned to extend a hand of kindness, not because she wanted something in return, but because she knew what it felt like to need that kindness herself. Over time, her solitude became her strength. She found purpose in her independence and resilience. Her solitude was no longer a mark of weakness, but a testament to her ability to navigate life's challenges without relying on others. She understood that life would bring moments of joy and pain, and she had learned to face them head-on. She didn't need a crowd to validate her experiences. She was content in the knowledge that she was capable of facing anything life threw her way. This doesn't mean that she stopped yearning for connection or that she stopped hoping for a true friend, but she understood that her life was whole with or without friendships. Her happiness was not dependent on anyone else's presence. It was a happiness she created, nurtured, and protected. And when friendships did come her way, she embraced them, not out of need, but out of choice. She was free to welcome people into her life without fearing that her happiness depended on them. In her journey of solitude, this woman discovered that being alone and being lonely are not the same. She learned that loneliness is a temporary feeling, one that she could overcome by cultivating a deeper relationship with herself. She realized that the world around her could be beautiful, even if she experienced it on her own, that her dreams were worth pursuing, even if she was the only one cheering herself on. So here she stands today, a woman who has walked through life alone but never lost her way. She has become her own pillar of strength, her own source of joy, and her own best friend. Her life is not defined by the absence of others, but by the presence of her own courage and resilience. She is not lonely, she is simply at peace with herself. For those who look at her and feel pity or judgment, she would tell them this: she is proof that solitude can be transformative, that being alone is not a sign of failure, but a testament to inner strength. She is a reminder that one's worth is not defined by the number of friends they have, but by the depth of their relationship with themselves. So let us look at this woman not with pity, but with admiration. Let us see her as a symbol of resilience, as a person who has found fulfillment within herself, as a woman who has embraced solitude and turned it into her greatest strength. She may walk alone, but her path is one of dignity, courage, and profound inner peace. In a world that often values quantity over quality, she stands as a beacon of self-reliance and self-love, a woman who has found her worth not in the acceptance of others, but in the acceptance of herself, And that, perhaps, is the most powerful friendship of all.